when analyzing and looking at the future trends that our society and planet is going to face, or they are facing, we have looked at those big uncertainties that are driving the multiple crises: societal crisis, economic crisis, conflict crisis, climate crisis, and the way in which society is being driven today. And the most uncertain factors that we have identified as drivers of change are inequalities or equalities, whether a world that we can design in the future will be more equal or less equal, and whether we will be able as a society in general to tackle and control climate change or not. So those are big questions that we thought that they were the most important ones to consider in order to plot what type of different alternatives we can think in designing our own future. Well, we have then elaborated 4 scenarios towards 2050 on the basis of 2 axes: the axis of inequalities or equalities, and the axis of controlled climate change and uncontrolled climate change. And on the basis of those 2 axes, we have created 4 scenarios, and the options to which we have come up with are the following. So the first scenario that we call the high-tech hives, it's basically a scenario in which most of the society will be dominated by power and health, equally distributed. So we see that inequalities could diminish, but on the contrary, a scenario in which we didn't have the opportunity or the chance to control climate change. So on one hand, more equality and wealth distributed evenly, but in an uncontrolled climate change, which of course gives a lot of work to do for the next generation. So that's the scenario 1, which is high-tech hives. It's the idea of the bees controlling, the bee-like hive controlling the power in a society. Then another alternative that we thought about was scenario number 2, which is, we call it disconnected ghettos, in which again power and wealth would be held only by very few members of the population, just 1%. It's pretty much sometimes what we see here now with the super billionaires holding a lot of money today. So that scenario is having again the same type of wealth monopoly, but with again a runaway climate change. So we didn't manage in between today and 2050 to control climate change. So we have then in this scenario a very difficult situation with social equalities and a very difficult situation with the climate and the environment. So this is why we call it disconnected the ghettos, because everything will be disconnected and disentangled at every level of the societal dimension. The third alternative that we come up with is the quadrant number 3, or the scenario number 3, which is called the green castles power, or the green castles, in which the power and the health will be again held by 1% of the population, hence castles. But on the contrary, the society achieved to control climate change. So we would have people living in very good situations, others not, but the climate change issue would have been managed, and the consequences of the environmental catastrophes will not be seen anymore. So a less equal society for a well-distributed actions regarding managing and controlling climate. And the last scenario, the last alternative, is the scenario number 4, which is about eco-villages. So by the name of the scenario, you can see that in this situation, the climate change was controlled, but and the equality and the wealth are more evenly distributed. So you can think about as a nicer scenario compared to the ones in which climate change is not controlled at all. And here we can see that, there could be more social cohesion if social inequalities are lessened. These are the four alternatives that we considered when talking about the fourth very difficult crisis that we are living today. Well, the hope for all of you is to look at everything what is happening in the world with a very big lens so that we can see all the dimensions of the human being from every little aspect, whether it's from a climate, environmental perspective, whether we have to include the financial situation, global inflation, whether we have to include issues about governance and democracy, and whether we have to look also at issues of technological development and innovation. And all these things, we have to have them in our radar because it's the only way in which we can really anticipate the future comprehensively, in which we can anticipate the future with a lot of precaution and with interesting action points. We need to have all these dimensions all together at the same time.